People of Reddit who knew a celebrity before they were famous. How has fame changed them? My dad was pretty good friends with Ben and Jerry, the ice cream guys, in college. He even roomed with Jerry. As far as I know. Dad is good friends with all the guys from Slipknot. They're still really nice. Cool guys. In fact, one of them even introduced my mom to my dad. Still married. I'm close friends with Jermaine Clement, Grammy Award winner. BIII. Flight of the Conchords etc etc. And close to his brother T. Meyer also. Jermaine has remained a pretty solid normal person. I still talk to him on FB, cause he's always out of town. And the celebrity hasn't got to his head one bit. We still talk about our kids and talk shit. My dad went to high school with George Lucas. According to him, Lucas was a quiet guy and was always writing or drawing in a notebook he carried around. He doesn't blame the fact that Lucas doesn't really like Modesto. It's an awful place. My sister was in high school musicals with Jeremy Renner. She never thought he'd be as famous as he is now. But she said he was one of the hardest working individuals she'd ever seen. Once again. This was in Modesto. And she doesn't blame Jeremy for hating our horrible city. Unfortunately, the only marginally famous person I went to high school with was the lead singer of Deaf Heaven, George Clark. You may know them from the album Sunbather. And the incredibly polarizing view they have among metal fans. I think George would not like my saying this. But he was heavily involved in musical theater at the time. It's strange hearing his screaming vocals and reminiscing about the fact that he was the lead role in Bye Bye Birdie. To his credit though, he played the most amazing villain in Arsenic and Old Lace. And, of course, he also hates Modesto. We all do. I went to school with Cole Edwards. Super nice. Intelligent. Funny guy. Bumped into him a couple of times in college and he seemed a touch vain and aloof. Then he became an extremely successful NASCAR driver. And anytime I run into him, he's back to being the jovial, genial dude I always knew. He maintains his hometown roots. And does what he can to help friends finance business ventures and artistic endeavors. My aunt went to high school with Robert Downey Jr. and said he was an asshole in class to everyone, especially the teacher, because he knew he would become something whether he finished school or not, because his family was wealthy and his dad had actor hookups. To be fair, he's pretty well liked now, specifically for being someone who turned their shit around. My mother went to high school with John Cougar Mellencamp. He was an arsehole before he became famous. He's still an arsehole now. My mom knew Eminem before he was famous. She has this story where he accidentally set her curtains on fire. Edit. I will get the whole story tomorrow. Edit 2. The full story. She said her and her friend were in a room of a house my mom was babysitting in. When he came in the window and was being annoying, and at some point the idea came up to play with a lighter and a can of Aquanet, and her friend set fire to the curtains while he leaped out the window. I grew up with Ryan Dunn and considered him a brother and was even his roommate for a spell. He would spend holidays with my family. We were friends since we were 14 and continued to stay friends until his death. He was always the best dude. And fame just made him closer with his real friends. There was never a time in his life, either before or after his fame, that he wasn't the nicest guy in the world. My mom taught A.J. Green, an American football wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. He grew up down south. She taught him 8th grade math. Twice. My brother graduated high school a few years before him, but has said that he was a nice enough kid. Now he's just a popular icon for young aspiring African Americans wanting to play professional football. He is continually supportive of youth and high school football in our town, though. So I wouldn't say that he's strayed too far from his roots. But does he have hands like glue? Did he recently buy a 10,000 gallon saltwater fish tank? I'm from Auckland, NZ. Where Lord grew up. She used to not be able to afford pies. Now she can afford pies. Other than that, so far she seems cool. Geology doesn't pay well. The linebacker from the 49ers Patrick Willis is one of my best friend's step-cousin. Patrick grew up in a town from TN called Brewsterton. Growing up his father was abusive and so one of my best friend's family adopted him. He was always a great guy who respected everybody. To this day when he gets a chance he comes back to Brewsterton for a mini football camp and hang out with his family. We get to play golf in the summers sometimes as well. 10-stroke-10 guy. Fame never fazed him really. I didn't know him really and he was already famous when this happened. I'm from Shawnee, Oklahoma and my great aunt is good friends with Brad Pitt's grandma. We stopped by her house for some reason. I can't remember what for but when we got there I really had to piss. So, when we get there I immediately go straight for the bathroom. To my surprise I walk in on Brad Pitt dropping a deuce. I was mortified. Mostly because I was only 9 and secondly I had no f***ing idea Brad Pitt was there. Like, I knew he was her grandson but I spent a lot of time there. Saw all the pictures of him she had on her walls. I was so embarrassed. I just walked to my aunt and was like Brad Pitt is here. And she looks at me confused and goes I told you William came to visit. Yeah. I didn't know that was his real name. My aunt dated Viggo Mortensen in the 80s. So we knew him a bit then and still meet him once in a while. He's the godfather of my cousin etc. He has always been a down-to-earth kind of guy and always nice and humble. I think this is partly him but also that he never really got his breakthrough until Lord of the Rings. I think he was always told that this movie would make him a well-known actor. But it didn't really happen until he was Aragorn. When he was old. I went to HS with Chris Mintz-Plasse. We weren't great friends, but friendly classmates. He was always pretty funny goofy. Always light-hearted joking. I've seen him once since he was in Superbad. And it was pleasant. My wife grew up with Eric Church and Madison Bumgarner. She says that Madison has not changed one bit but Eric was never the bad boy country type. He drove Camry and wore polo shirts. Both are nice guys though when we have had conversations. Whoever gave Eric Church aviators and a trucker hat did him a huge favor. I figured the bad boy outsider vibe was more a result of being an outsider in country music. Brother went to school with Jennifer Lawrence. He didn't know her too well, but said one time in English class she knocked over a pencil sharpener onto his balls. Wow, she's so down to earth. I went to middle school with Ronda Rousey, female UFC undefeated bantamweight champion. She was pretty quiet in school. Super introverted. I have not seen her in over 10 years. But it's amazing to see her now. She's a total outspoken badass who scares the shit out of me. I know Brandon Suhu, the Asian drug lord kid from Tropic Thunder. He's a really cool, nice guy. Doesn't like it when people refer to him as famous. Pretty normal kid even after being in such a big movie at his age. He's also a really fun guy to party with. Kit Harington is a massive pothead. He used to get stoned in the woods with my boyfriend. Whoopi Goldberg smoked me and a friend out in Berkeley in the early 80s for his birthday. She was smart, nice and hilarious. I think she has just gotten smarter, nicer and funnier and maybe a little grayer. I live in Stratford, Ontario, home of the Biebs. I didn't know him personally, but knew his friends. From what I can hear, he was in a shat before and after fame. He was suspended for pouring coffee on a teacher and then flipping her off. Recently, he was kicked out of the local theater for punching an old lady who reported him to the ushers for smoking pot in the theater. So really nothing changed. I have a bet going on with myself on when he dies. I'm betting on 27. If I'm wrong I owe myself a hand job. My friend's second cousin is Pitbull. He said they never really talked much because, as a kid, Pitbull was pretty rude. Edit. Obviously. This experience my friend had with Pitbull doesn't qualify him as a horrible person. And it's cool to hear that others have had good experiences. I think I'll ask for more details. Was this before or after he took his life from negative to positive? I worked with and was friends with Daniel Rudy Rutiger. After the movie hit pay dirt he had a whole lot more friends and I haven't heard from him in 24 years. Edit. I haven't thought about him in many years. Sorry I went with my Swift key predicted spelling. Corrected. It's okay. He was offsides anyways. He got famous for being a cheater. Dated the, now former, COO of Mozilla in grade 8. Honestly. In hindsight. He was the only kid in our group of friends that was a truly outstanding human being. Even at age 13 he was insightful and bright. Kind and unique. I'm not sure if that's the type of famous you're looking for. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on the same tech celeb list as Jobs, Gates, etc. Edit to add. Seriously. Grade 8. When I say dated, I mean grade 8 circa 1992 dating. 7ish weeks. Lots of awkward hand holding and hugging. I think we kissed once. I remember standing a lot of teen angst staring. He wrote me a beautiful song for my birthday and gave me roses. I was smitten but still very 13. As was he. I feel like this is a Pepperidge Farm meme. Remember when 13-year-olds didn't give blowjobs and STDs? He remembers. My uncle dated Layla L when she used to be a Miami Heat dancer. But when she got the whole WWE gig, she became way too busy to be him. She was always nice though. She knew I was a big fan and offered to have dinner with us when she came back down. My aunt grew up in Philadelphia with Will Smith and apparently he'd constantly ask her out only to get sent home by my grandfather. My aunt says he was a big geek. I'm just glad I don't have to see Jaden at Thanksgiving. I got a friend who's cousins with Mark and Donnie Wahlberg. One story I took from him was that the family reunion episode of their show was staged and neither one went to the real family reunion. So it sounds like they're assholes. Mark Wahlberg is a well-known dick. My cousin used to work in the hairdressers that Brad Pitt went to. She is very Irish, down from Galway area, as is most of my family. This was just after Snatch had been filmed. He'd always walk in and say how are you Linda? How's the crack? And then proceed to ask her about the interesting customers they'd had in. She described him as intensely curious about other people. And not very good at talking about himself. I don't know if that's still the case. But she still calls him one of the nicest people she's met. He's insecure about himself since the interrupted juice dropping. My aunt went to high school with Adam Savage of Mythbusters. She didn't know him personally but said he always kept to himself. Walsh was working on strange and interesting projects. We'll see if I can dig up the yearbook she's shown me before. I don't know if this counts or not but mom had drinks with Eazy-E once. She said he was super nice. I've always been lime green jelly. Danny Whitney, aka Larry the Cable Guy, graduated from our small Christian school. I always thought he was a goofball who wasn't that funny. I'm kind of the serious type and he was never serious. It got old fast with me. I tried to avoid him. He made a couple of cable specials and I still didn't think he was funny. But he was getting funny. There he invented Larry the Cable Guy and the rest is history. Since then, we've crossed paths occasionally and he's very centered and a really nice person. He has a child with issues and that has made him compassionate. Just for the record, the country thing is just his shtick. He grew up in South Florida and was not country at all. He's still a bit crude for my tastes. But I feel a lot better about him now. He's one of those who doesn't seem to have become a worse person the more fame he has acquired. I'm happy for his success. Not that famous but I went to high school with Ansel Elgort, August from The Fault in Our Stars. Was your typical popular douchebag. Dated my friend and cheated on her. Loud and arrogant. The Alex from Target kid is one of my best friends. One of my high school friends' dad was Steve Carell's college roommate. The two keep in touch and Steve visits the family on occasion. Apparently he's a swell guy. I've seen pictures to prove this. Edit. Carol. I knew Taylor Swift before she went by Taylor. Her name was Becky. She was a good person. But one day she did a marijuana. I went to high school with Mark Sanchez and he was a douche back then. 2. I'm European. So don't judge me. Is he butt fumble? My dad used to teach actors as one of his first careers. He taught quite a few people. But the two that really stood out to him were Drake Bell and Josh Peck from the children's show Drake and Josh. He hasn't talked to them in about 20 years. But apparently at the time they were both assholes. Everyone was an asshole when they were 8. Aren't those dudes in their early to mid 20s? So he was their preschool teacher? I went to high school with Seth Rogen. He was a very funny guy. And couldn't really keep quiet in class because he was always thinking up funny shit. Our math teacher came up with a solution to this. Seth would have the floor to himself for 5 minutes every Monday. In exchange, he'd keep quiet the rest of the week. It was great. Seth would do a hilarious monologue every week, telling outrageous stories about what he'd been up to over the weekend, often integrating the teacher and members of the class in the story. Removed. Lazy Bone from Bone Thugs N Harmony. Kept the same humble attitude. But Cleveland is just like that. There's a culture here of leaving celebrities alone and letting them be regular people here. Especially if they're from here. My mom is a celebrity to me. I know her to this day. Edit. She's definitely one of my favorite adult celebs. I've known pole vaulter Jack Whitt for close to 10 years. He's always been a really good dude. Fame hasn't changed him much if at all. Although he isn't some A-list celebrity. Isn't some A-list celebrity? Can't throw a rock anywhere in this country without hitting someone who has a Jack Whitt poster in their bedroom. Come on man. I went to school with Harry Styles. I wouldn't say we were best friends or anything, but we hung around together. Went to each other's houses and stuff and things like that. He was always a good singer and had a band at school which won the local battle of the bands. Not bragging here, but the band I was in beat him at the school talent show. Close bracket. Anyway. He was always really friendly and popular with teachers' kids and he doesn't seem to have changed at all. I still have his number. He hooked up my niece with some tickets to see them when they were touring round here. Still a really nice guy and keeps in touch with people from school. This will get buried. But I went to elementary and middle school with Miley Cyrus. We were sort of friends. Mostly talked on AIM and stuff. She was super normal and I still believe she is and is just trying to FCK with everyone. Edit. To be more specific. I knew her from when we were like 6 until she moved away when we were maybe 12. She went by Destiny back then and everyone knew who her dad was. We talked off and on and mostly just had mutual friends. So it wasn't like we were super close. But I remember being bummed out when she moved because we were just starting to be friends. Haven't talked to her since. Don't expect to. I swear that she's putting on this act to FCK with the media. At least this is what I want to believe because that makes me love her even more. I grew up and went to the same school as Ellen Page. She was pretty quiet in school and such but very excitable when you spoke to her. I'm not sure she has changed at all, but I haven't seen her since she became famous. Ben Haggerty was pretty nice in HS. Seems he still is. Biggest change is probably his perspective on everyday things. But as you can see with his support of local non-profits and activism, he still has a good heart. For those who may not know, Ben Haggerty is Macklemore. It actually didn't change him at all. He was always a f-king smartass and he still is. He was hilarious and annoying as a teenager. Now he's rich, famous, hilarious, and annoying. Rich, famous, hilarious and annoying? Dude. I want to be that. I'm already 2 of those. Kid in my kindergarten class named Cooper went on to act in a few movies that I have personally never seen. The one thing I remember about Cooper from kindergarten was one time I was playing with him at his house and his mom walked into the room with no shirt on. As for how it changed him, I couldn't say. I haven't seen him since I was 5. Till no one on Reddit knows anyone famous. My sister is a fairly well-known singer. She hasn't really changed all that much since she started gaining some fame. She's a lot more paranoid about people trying to be her friends now, and she sometimes gets tired of being recognized when she's out in public. But she's wanted to be famous since she was little and is overall pretty happy with her success. She does try to be friendly when she's recognized and is usually willing to pose in pictures with fans and spend a few moments talking to them. She's still a sarcastic goofball though with her close friends and family. And I don't think she would have been any less so if she hadn't become a celebrity. I really hope your sister is Gary Busey. ELZ. If you're Frankie. Not here Frankie.